Why did the room go quiet before anyone even realized a punch was coming? No one noticed the scrape of the chair at first. Not really. It blended into the mess hall's usual chaos, boots on linoleum, metal trays sliding, voices layered over each other, but something shifted in the air. A pressure. Anna Sharma felt it before she saw it. The way conversations thinned. The way laughter stalled mid-breath. She didn't look up right away. She didn't need to. She was sitting alone, as usual, her back straight, shoulders relaxed, a spoon hovering between tray and mouth. The stew had already gone lukewarm, but she hadn't minded. She rarely did. Cold food was a familiar thing. So was being ignored. Sergeant First Class Marcus Thorne stood up behind her. Big man, loud reputation, the kind of presence that bent rooms around him. He had been drinking, celebrating. His voice had been carrying across the hall for 10 minutes now, wrapped in confidence and contempt. She'd heard enough to know she was the subject, even without catching every word. She tracked him in reflections, stainless steel surfaces, peripheral cues. The rhythm of his boots told her how close he was before his shadow reached her table. Something wrong with the food, Major. She kept her eyes on her tray. Calm was not something she performed. It was something she lived in. The food is fine, Sergeant. Then why you sittin' over here like you're better than everyone else? That one landed where he wanted it to, not because it was true, but because he needed it to be. Anna finally looked up, met his eyes, no challenge, no apology, just presence. I'm busy. That was it, no lecture, no rank pulling, no sharp edges, and somehow that made it worse. She felt it then, the shift from posturing to decision, the moment when a man stopped thinking and chose momentum instead. His shoulders rolled forward, his jaw clenched. The punch came wide and ugly, fueled by liquor and a wounded sense of order. Anna didn't flinch. She moved just enough. A step, a turn, a redirection so subtle most of the room didn't understand what they were seeing until it was over. His arm extended too far. A joint went where it wasn't meant to go. The sound, wet, final, cut through the silence. His balance vanished. Her boot found his ankle. Gravity did the rest. 3 seconds. He hit the table head first and dropped like a switch had been flipped. The king of the outpost lay unconscious on a mess hall floor, his fist still clenched around nothing. Anna looked down at him. No satisfaction, no anger, just assessment. Then she sat back down. The spoon finally reached her mouth. Around her no one spoke. Medics rushed in. Chairs scraped again, louder this time. She kept eating, her heartbeat steady, her breathing slow. Tomorrow, she still had a system to calibrate. And this wasn't even the hardest part. Why had she known the moment she stepped off the helicopter that this place would test more than her skills? 3 days earlier, the wind had tried to peel her skin off her face. Forward operating base Kestrel sat wedged into the Pamir Mountains like it didn't belong there, a scatter of hardened shelters clinging to rock and snow. The air was thin. The cold wasn't dramatic, it was predatory. It found gaps in fabric, in focus, in patience. Anna had stepped onto the landing pad with a duffel over her shoulder and a familiar sense of being watched. Not curiosity, evaluation. Lieutenant Davis had met her with a salute that was just a little too crisp. Nervous energy, polite discomfort. Major Sharma, welcome to Kestrel. She returned the salute and scanned the perimeter while he talked. Machine gun placements, wire angles, camera arcs, standard defenses, adequate, predictable. She already saw the blind spots. The command post smelled like ozone and old coffee. Colonel Eva Rostova didn't stand when Anna entered. She didn't need to. Your file says you're here to make my base listen to mountains, Rostova said, eyes sharp as chipped stone. Yes, ma'am. And it also says you fight. Anna didn't smile, only when necessary. Rostova studied her longer than was polite. You'll be working with Thorne's platoon. He doesn't trust technology or outsiders. I don't require trust, Anna said evenly, only compliance. That earned a flicker of something like interest. Her first meeting with Thorne confirmed everything the colonel hadn't said out loud. He looked her up and down like a problem he'd already solved. His words dripped with courtesy, sharpened into insult. She didn't rise to it. That was mistake number one, for him. Over the next days, the resistance came in small, deliberate cuts, questioned decisions, loud sighs, explanations of equipment she'd helped design. He spoke around her, not to her, treated her rank like a clerical error. Anna absorbed it all quietly. She learned long ago that being underestimated was not a weakness. It was camouflage. But even camouflage wears thin. The night in the mess hall wasn't about stew or seating. It was about hierarchy, about a man who felt the ground shifting under his boots and lashed out at the nearest symbol of change. When Thorne went down, something else did too. The illusion that she was alone. What no one noticed was how carefully Anna filed the moment away, not as a victory, but as a warning. Because proving yourself once is easy. Proving yourself when it matters is something else entirely. What if the system everyone mocked was the only thing standing between them and disaster? The training exercise was supposed to be routine, a formality. Thorne had been looking forward to it, a chance to remind everyone who understood this terrain and who didn't. Anna sat at her console in the Tactical Operations Center, running the system in passive mode. Diagnostics only, no theatrics, just listening. On her screen, the mountain spoke. She saw the main force first, loud enough to be seen by human ears, deliberate, obvious. Then the quieter signatures emerged, almost shy in comparison. Two-man teams slipping through dead ground, using the land like it had taught them something. She spoke once, calm, clear. This is a feint. Thorne dismissed it, instinct over data, eyes over patterns, pride over probability. Colonel Ristova hesitated. The room held its breath. Anna didn't raise her voice, didn't argue harder. She didn't need to. The data didn't change just because someone didn't like it. When the fuel depot ambush was sprung exactly where she said it would be, the silence afterward was different, heavier, less shocked, more unsettled. Thorne didn't look at her. Anna kept working. She felt it then, a quiet shift inside herself, not pride, something steadier, validation without celebration. But systems don't exist to win arguments. They exist for what comes next. Why did the mountain start whispering when the storm was still hours away? It began as a rhythm, too steady to be weather, too deliberate to be chance. Anna isolated the signal while the wind howled outside. Dozens of footfalls, weighted, disciplined, moving in a way that suggested planning, not wandering. She layered the data, acoustic, seismic, thermal, fighting through storm clutter, patterns aligned. This wasn't an exercise. This is real, she said. Thorne scoffed, but his voice lacked conviction now. Even he could feel it, the tension in the room, the way confidence drained when certainty couldn't keep up. Then the storm hit. A wall of white erased the world beyond 5 feet. Comms died. Satellites went blind. Vision, the thing Thorne trusted most, was stolen without apology. Inside the Tactical Operations Center, Anna's console glowed steadily. Her system didn't care about snow. She narrated the battle before it happened, fixing force, flankers, breach points, the enemy's intent laid bare not by bravado but by physics. Colonel Ristova listened. Thorne obeyed. That was the moment something broke inside him, not publicly, quietly. The realization that strength without understanding was just noise. The base fought blind but not clueless. Machine guns fired on coordinates they couldn't see. Squads waited where the enemy thought no one would be. When the elite team slipped inside the wire, aiming for decapitation, it almost worked. Almost. In the darkness, when instinct screamed to charge, Anna pulled Thorn back. Not that way. She led them through shadows and schematics, through spaces no one thought about because no one had ever needed to. In the generator room, she didn't fire at people. She fired at certainty. The lights died, the noise vanished, and in that sudden void, discipline mattered more than aggression ever could. The fight ended not with shouting, but with control. When dawn came, the mountain was quiet again. So was Thorn. What does accountability look like when the noise finally fades? The debrief was clinical, precise, honest. Anna didn't embellish, didn't minimize. She spoke in facts and outcomes. Others spoke for her. When Thorn stood, his voice was stripped of performance. He named his failures without defense. It was the first time Anna had seen him as just a man. Colonel Rostova's decision was swift. Relieved of duty, pending inquiry. Thorn left without looking back. Anna returned to her workspace and ran diagnostics. The system held, so did she. Lieutenant Davis thanked her. Others nodded as they passed. Respect arrived quietly without ceremony. Later, Chief Warrant Officer Fisk set a mug of coffee beside her console. "They're recommending you for a medal," he said. Anna watched the data scroll. Rockfalls, wind, life returning to baseline. She thought of the mess hall, the punch, the moment everyone expected chaos and got silence instead. She felt tired, grounded, clear. Medals were symbols, outcomes were real. Outside, the mountains listened. Inside, Anna kept working. Because sometimes strength doesn't announce itself. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. Why did she feel more exposed standing still than she ever had under fire? The morning after the mess hall incident arrived without ceremony. No announcement, no explanation, just a colder silence than usual stretched thin across the base like frost over metal. Anna Sharma noticed it immediately, not because people stared, but because they didn't. Conversations paused when she entered a room, then resumed at a lower volume once she passed. Doors closed a little faster. Salutes were sharper, less human. She preferred it that way. Silence was honest. It didn't pretend to like you. It didn't demand anything. It just existed. She walked to the signal's shelter before dawn, boots crunching over snow that hadn't yet learned to forgive the night. The mountains loomed as they always did, massive, indifferent, ancient. They didn't care about rank or reputation. They responded only to pressure, time, and truth. Anna had always respected that. Inside the shelter, the heaters rattled to life. Screens flickered awake. The acoustic resonance system began its quiet work, listening to a world most people never noticed. She removed her gloves, flexed her fingers, and began calibrating again from scratch. She didn't have to. The system was already within tolerance. But control, she had learned, was not about necessity. It was about reassurance, hers. As the data flowed, her mind drifted, not to the punch, but to what came before it. The long chain of small dismissals that led there. The way Sergeant Thorne's hostility had never really been about her skills, or even her presence. It had been about displacement. She represented something he couldn't overpower with muscle or memory. Something that didn't ask permission to exist in his world. And that frightened him. By mid-morning, Lieutenant Davis arrived with 2 soldiers in tow. They stood awkwardly in the doorway, as if unsure whether they were welcome or intruding. "Major," Davis said, "Colonel Rostova asked if you could brief us on the next phase of sensor placement." Anna nodded without looking up. "Have them pull chairs." The soldiers exchanged a glance. They moved quickly. As she spoke, she kept her tone even, not corrective, not defensive. She explained why certain nodes needed elevation despite exposure, why acoustic shadowing mattered more than line of sight, why patience sometimes saved more lives than vigilance. She didn't reference the mess hall. No one else did either. But when one of the soldiers asked a genuine question, tentative, almost embarrassed, about how the system filtered wind noise, Anna paused, looked at him, answered carefully, thoroughly. Something shifted. Not acceptance, but curiosity. It was a start. Later that afternoon, she found herself alone in the motor pool, checking power feeds near the snow vehicles. Thorne was there too, his arm bound in a sling, his posture rigid with forced restraint. They worked in silence for several minutes, the air thick with things unsaid. "You didn't have to do that," he muttered finally. She didn't ask what he meant, she already knew. "Yes," she replied calmly, "I did." He glanced at her, then away. "You embarrass me in front of my men." "You try to hit me," she said. "No judgment, just fact." He swallowed. The sound was loud in the quiet space. "I know." She waited, silence again, letting it do the work words couldn't. "You don't belong here," he said, not with anger now but confusion. "This place eats people like you." Anna considered that. This place eats people who refuse to listen. He snorted softly, not dismissive, just tired. "You think listening keeps you alive." "I think arrogance gets you killed," she replied. He didn't argue. When he left, she exhaled slowly, not in relief, in recognition. Confrontation was easy, resolution was harder. That night, as the base settled into its uneasy routine, Anna lay awake on her narrow bunk, staring at the ceiling. Sleep came in fragments here, thin, unreliable. She replayed conversations, data patterns, faces. She thought of her first deployment, the way she'd learned early that proving yourself once was never enough. That competence was not a shield, only a test. You passed it every day or you didn't pass at all. She had been younger then, eager, certain that excellence would speak for itself. It hadn't. What had spoken was consistency, calm, the refusal to shrink or shout. Outside, the wind rose, rattling the shelter walls. The mountains shifted their weight, settling into a long night. And somewhere far beyond sight, the system registered a faint anomaly. Anna sat up. It was nothing at first glance, a whisper beneath noise, a pattern that didn't quite fit. She pulled on her jacket and returned to the shelter, fingers already moving as her mind locked into focus. The data sharpened, clarified. Movement. She checked timestamp, correlation, dismissed wildlife, adjusted filters. The whisper became a murmur. She didn't sound an alarm, not yet. Instead, she watched. By morning, the murmur had faded. The pattern dissolved back into the mountain's natural rhythms, but the unease remained, coiled tight beneath her ribs. At the briefing later that day, she mentioned it casually. "We may be seeing early indicators of increased activity southeast of the perimeter." Thorne scoffed from the back of the room, habit more than conviction. Anna met his gaze, didn't challenge him, didn't retreat. "Or it may be nothing," she added, "but nothing is rarely consistent." Colonel Ristovan nodded slowly. "Log it, monitor." Thorne said nothing. Over the next 48 hours, the base returned to its version of normal. Patrols rotated. Equipment hummed. The mess hall buzzed again, cautiously. Anna resumed her quiet corner, her data tablet her only companion. No one sat with her. But no one mocked her either. That mattered more than she expected. Late on the second night, Thorne approached her table. He didn't sit, didn't loom. "Colonel wants your system tied into tomorrow's exercise," he said. "Neutral, professional." "It's already capable," Anna replied. "I know," a pause. "She wants you there in the operations center." Anna looked up at him, studied his face. The bruises were fatting, something else was too, certainty maybe. "I'll be there," she said. As he walked away, she felt a strange weight settle in her chest. Not dread, responsibility. Being right carried consequences. The exercise began under clear skies, a luxury in this place. Thorne's platoon moved with practiced efficiency. Watching them from the operations center, Anna felt a familiar duality, respect for their discipline, frustration at its limits. When the acoustic feed lit up with the now familiar pattern, she didn't hesitate. "This is a feint." The words hung in the air. Thorne dismissed them. The colonel hesitated. And when the truth revealed itself exactly as the data predicted, something fundamental cracked. Not loudly, not dramatically, but permanently. Afterward, no one congratulated her. No applause, no speeches. Instead, Chief Warrant Officer Fisk nodded once. Davis met her eyes and held them. And Thorne didn't look at her at all. That night, Anna stood outside alone, staring into the vast dark. The stars were sharp, unforgiving, beautiful. She felt proud, not because she'd been right, but because she hadn't compromised herself to be heard. She'd let the truth speak. And she knew, deep down, that the mountains weren't finished talking yet. Because the whisper she'd heard days earlier hadn't been a false alarm. It had been a warning. And soon, the base would learn the difference. Why did her chest tighten when the data finally confirmed what she had already felt in her bones? The confirmation didn't arrive with drama. No alarms, no flashing warnings, just a quiet alignment of numbers that slid into place like a lock clicking shut. Anna stared at the screen longer than necessary, not because she doubted it, but because she understood the weight of being certain. The mountains were no longer whispering. They were speaking clearly now. She leaned back in her chair, fingers pressed together, breathing slow. Outside the signal's shelter, the wind had eased, leaving behind a stillness that felt wrong, like the pause before a held breath was released. The system's overlays showed it plainly. Movement patterns repeating, tightening, growing more deliberate with each pass. Whoever was out there had stopped probing. They were planning. Anna routed the data to a private channel first, not out of secrecy, but discipline. Information, she'd learned, had to arrive at the right speed to be believed. Too fast and it was dismissed as panic. Too slow and it was regret. She stood, pulled on her jacket, and stepped into the cold. The base looked peaceful in the early light. Soldiers moved through routines with the easy confidence of people who believed the hardest thing had already happened. The mess hall doors swung open and shut. A generator coughed, then settled. Somewhere, someone laughed. Anna felt strangely apart from it all. Not lonely, just offset. Like her timeline had shifted a few hours ahead of everyone else. She walked straight to the Tactical Operations Center. Colonel Rostova was already there, coffee untouched, eyes on a static map. She didn't turn when Anna entered. "You saw it too," Rostova said. Anna nodded. The confidence interval crossed 98% an hour ago. Rostova exhaled through her nose. Distance. 9 kilometers and closing, dispersed formation, heavy equipment load. Not shepherds. No. They stood together in silence, two women shaped by different paths but united by the same instinct. This mattered. "Thorne won't like this," Rostova said finally. Anna didn't respond right away. She watched the data scroll on the secondary display, the system's quiet heartbeat steady and indifferent. "He doesn't have to like it," she said. "He just has to follow it." Rostova turned then, studied her. "You're sure?" Anna met her gaze. "Yes, ma'am." That was enough. The briefing room filled quickly. Word traveled fast when the colonel called an unscheduled all hands. Faces carried curiosity, irritation, skepticism. Thorne took his place near the front, jaw tight, arms still stiff from the sling he no longer wore. Anna stood beside the main screen, not behind it, beside it. Rostova spoke first, clear, controlled. "We have credible intelligence indicating a coordinated hostile movement toward this base." A ripple moved through the room. Anna took over without ceremony. She didn't dramatize, didn't soften. She showed them patterns, overlays, correlations. She let the data speak, but she guided them through its language, translating complexity into clarity. Thorn interrupted once. That terrain's impassable. Anna nodded. For vehicles, not for disciplined infantry using the weather as cover. Murmurs followed, doubt but quieter now. Why now? Someone asked. Anna paused. That question mattered. Because they think we're blind, she said, and soon we will be. She explained the storm front moving in, how it would cripple visual surveillance, how communications would degrade, how isolation would turn confidence into vulnerability. No one laughed. When she finished, Rostova issued orders. Calm, efficient. The room shifted from debate to preparation with military speed. Chairs scraped back. Radios crackled to life. Thorn lingered. You're basing all this on sensors, he said quietly, once they were alone. Anna looked at him, really looked. The arrogance was thinner now, replaced by something like unease. I'm basing it on patterns, she replied. Sensors just help me hear them. He rubbed a hand over his face. And if you're wrong? I won't be, she said, not defiant, just honest. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. Tell me what you need. The words landed heavier than any apology. As the day wore on, the base transformed. Defensive positions adjusted, reserves repositioned, supplies redistributed. Anna moved between screens and conversations, translating data into decisions, decisions into lives. She felt the strain build behind her eyes. Not fear, responsibility, the quiet knowledge that if she failed, it wouldn't be her reputation that paid the price. It would be everyone else's blood. Night fell fast. The storm arrived faster. It slammed into the base like a living thing, wind shrieking, snow blinding, temperature dropping with brutal indifference. Visibility collapsed. Radios crackled with interference. The world beyond the wire vanished. Inside the operations center, Anna's system glowed steady blue. They're accelerating, she said, voice cutting through the noise, using the storm as cover. Thorn stood beside her now, not in front, watching the same screen, trusting what it showed him even as instinct screamed otherwise. How many? He asked. 50 minimum. The room went quiet. Rostova leaned over the map. Options. Anna swallowed. This was the moment she'd been preparing for without admitting it. If we meet them head-on, they'll fix us in place and flank. That's what they want. Thorn stiffened, so we let them come. We let part of them come, Anna corrected, and we bleed the rest where they don't expect resistance. She outlined the plan. Central reserves held back, peripheral reinforcement, controlled engagement, letting the enemy commit before revealing strength. It was patient, calculated, uncomfortable. Rostova didn't hesitate. Do it. The first contact came just before midnight. Anna called it 30 seconds before the wire sensors triggered. Her voice was calm, almost intimate over the command net, guiding movements in a world no one could see. North sector, 10 seconds. Gunfire erupted, muffled by snow, controlled, precise. She tracked flanking elements in real time, redirecting squads like pieces on a board. Every call was deliberate, every pause intentional. Then the anomaly appeared. Her stomach tightened. We have movement inside the perimeter. Rostova's head snapped up. Explain. They bypassed the wire, used the cliffs, small team, fast. Anna's fingers flew. They're heading here. The operations center tensed. Guards moved to the door. Thorn's hand went to his sidearm, instinct rising. No, Anna said sharply. She stood. They want us here, focused, static. The explosion hit before anyone could respond. The door buckled inward, smoke flooded the room, emergency lights flickered red, shouts, gunfire, chaos. Anna moved without thinking, grabbed Thorn's arm. With me. They ran, not toward the breach, but away from it. Into the maintenance corridor few people remembered existed. Chief Warrant Officer Fisk covered them without a word, shotgun booming in the smoke. In the dark, Anna led by memory. Schematics burned into her mind. Left turn, down ladder, generator room. The roar hit them like a wall, heat, noise, vibration. She slowed, raised a hand. Enemy voices echoed ahead, focused forward, unaware. Thorne raised his weapon. Anna stopped him, shook her head once. She aimed instead at the junction box above them. One shot. The world went black. In that split second of disorientation, Anna moved, fast, silent, precise. She disabled the first attacker before he could recover. Thorne took the second, raw instinct guided by her calm. When the lights came back on, the fight was over. Anna stood there, chest heaving now, the control finally cracking enough to remind her she was human. Back in the operations center, the battle outside concluded in fragments. Calls of neutralized threats, secured sectors, no cheers, just relief. Dawn arrived pale and quiet. The storm retreated, leaving behind stillness and wreckage and bodies half buried in snow. They had held. In the debrief hours later, Anna listened as others spoke for her. She said little. She didn't need to. When Thorne finally spoke, his voice lacked all armor. He named his failures. He credited her intervention. Anna felt no triumph. Only a deep, aching exhaustion, and a fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, this place had learned something that couldn't be unlearned. That strength wasn't always loud. That vision didn't always use eyes. And that sometimes, the person everyone tried to silence was the only one truly listening. Why did the silence after the gunfire feel heavier than the battle itself? The storm moved on without apology. It didn't linger to witness what it had enabled. By the time the first gray light crept over the ridgeline, the wind had settled into something almost gentle, as if the mountains themselves were pretending nothing had happened. Snow lay smooth and undisturbed in places where men had fallen only hours earlier. It softened edges, hid violence, made everything look deceptively clean. Anna stood just outside the Tactical Operations Center, her breath fogging the cold air, her eyes tracing the perimeter line. Soldiers moved quietly now, not with panic, not with bravado, with the subdued efficiency of people who had stared too closely at how fragile things really were. She felt it settling into her muscles. The delayed tremor that always came after control was no longer required. Her hands were steady, but her shoulders ached. Her jaw hurt from being clenched for too long. She welcomed the pain. It reminded her she was still present, still inside her own body. Behind her, voices murmured, reports being exchanged, casualty counts confirmed, ammunition tallied, the language of survival. Colonel Rostova emerged from the operations center and stopped beside her. They didn't look at each other right away. "You should get some rest," Rostova said. Anna nodded but didn't move. "After I run a full system integrity check." Rostova allowed herself the smallest sigh. "Of course." They stood together, two silhouettes against the pale morning, watching medics move stretchers through the snow. Rostova's voice dropped. "You knew they'd come for command." "Yes. And you didn't say anything." Anna turned then, met her eyes. "I didn't know when or how many. If I'd raised it without confirmation, it would have diluted everything else." Rostova studied her for a long moment. "You carry that weight easily." Anna shook her head. "I carry it quietly, that's not the same thing." Rostova nodded once, understanding, not sympathy. She turned and walked away, leaving Anna alone with the morning. Inside the signal's shelter, the screens glowed softly, oblivious to the cost of their accuracy. Anna sank into her chair and began the long, methodical process of review, node by node, timestamp by timestamp. She checked for drift caused by temperature fluctuations, recalibrated for altered snow density, verified redundancies. The system had held. She wished she could say the same for everyone else. When she finally stood to leave, hours had passed unnoticed. The bass felt different now. Not louder, not friendlier, but steadier. Soldiers met her eyes when they passed. Some nodded. Some simply paused, uncertain what to do with their respect. She didn't correct them. In the mess hall, she took her usual tray and her usual seat. The stew was hot this time. She barely tasted it. Thorne entered halfway through her meal. He moved more slowly now, less space around him. The invisible gravity he'd once carried had thinned. He scanned the room, saw her, and hesitated. Then he walked over. He didn't sit immediately, just stood there, hands flexing at his sides, searching for words that didn't come naturally. "I'm being relieved," he said finally. Anna nodded. She'd expected it. "They'll send me out once the weather clears." "Yes." He swallowed. "You could have let me make that charge in the operations center, let me fail completely." "I could have," she agreed. "Why didn't you?" Anna set her spoon down carefully. "Because my job isn't to punish mistakes, it's to prevent casualties." He laughed once, short and humorless. "Even mine." "Yes." He studied her face, as if trying to reconcile her calm with everything he'd believed about strength. "I spent my whole career thinking respect came from force," he said, "from being the one no one challenged." "And now?" she asked. "And now I realize I was loud because I was afraid of being wrong." The words seemed to drain something out of him as he said them. He pulled out the chair across from her and sat. "I don't know what I'm going to do next," he admitted. Anna considered him, not the rank, not the reputation, just the man. "Figure out what you're good at when no one's watching," she said. "That's usually the truest answer." He nodded slowly. "You ever get tired of being right?" She almost smiled. "I get tired of being ignored until it's too late." He looked at her then, really looked. "I see it now, not just what you did, but how you did it." "That took you almost losing everything," she said gently. "Yes," he replied, "and that's on me." When he stood to leave, he paused. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry." Anna met his gaze. "I know." That afternoon, the formal debrief began. The room was full, not crowded but dense. Every word mattered here. Rostova sat at the head of the table, her posture rigid, her expression carved from restraint. Reports were delivered, timelines reconstructed, decisions examined under unforgiving light. Anna spoke only when asked, her answers precise, unembellished. She didn't claim foresight where there had only been probability. She didn't downplay uncertainty. When Lieutenant Davis spoke, his voice was steady but his eyes were bright. "We were in position because Major Sharma told us to be," he said simply. "That's why we're alive." Chief Warrant Officer Fisk followed. "For 12 hours her system was our only operational picture," he said, "and she was our interpreter. Without that, we'd be digging out bodies instead of repairing damage." When it was over, Rostova folded her hands. "Major Sharma," she said, "you will be recommended for commendation, possibly more." Anna felt a familiar discomfort tighten in her chest. "With respect, ma'am, the system performed as designed. The defense succeeded because the base adapted." Rostova's eyes softened just slightly. "And who helped it adapt?" Anna didn't answer. The meeting adjourned. People filtered out, quieter than when they'd arrived. Outside, the sun had climbed higher, casting sharp shadows across the snow. Anna returned to her shelter. Late that evening, she stood alone again, watching the data stream settle into its long-term rhythms. The mountains were quiet, not silent, but honest. She tracked a distant rockfall, classified it, logged it. Chief Warrant Officer Fisk appeared at her side without announcement, setting a mug of coffee down beside her console. "You should sleep," he said. "I will," she replied, "soon." They stood together, the glow of the screens reflecting off tired faces. "They'll write reports about this," Fisk said. "Lessons learned, new protocols. Anna nodded. They always do. But most of it won't stick, he added. What will? She thought of the mess hall, of the punch that never landed, of the generator room in darkness, of Thorne's voice when he finally spoke without armor. People remember how it felt, she said, not what was written. Fisk smiled faintly. That's usually true. When he left, Anna remained at the console, her reflection layered over streams of data. She looked older than she had a week ago, not worn, just tempered. She thought of all the times she'd been told to be patient, to wait her turn, to let others lead. She had waited long enough. Not for recognition, but for readiness. Outside, the base settled into sleep. Inside, the system listened. And Anna, finally allowing herself to rest her hands in her lap, let the weight of it all press down, knowing she would carry it forward not as a burden, but as proof. Because sometimes survival isn't about overpowering the storm. Sometimes it's about understanding it well enough to stand when it passes. Why did the quiet that followed feel less like peace and more like a test she hadn't agreed to take? The base didn't celebrate survival, it absorbed it. By the third day after the storm, routines had resumed with almost unsettling precision. Patrol schedules were rewritten, damaged fencing repaired, burned-out lights replaced. The scars were there if you knew where to look, fresh welds on steel, boot prints frozen into snow near the wire. But most of it had already been folded into the background, the way military life always folded trauma into logistics. Anna noticed something else. People waited now. They waited for her to speak in briefings, waited for her confirmation before moving too fast, waited for her to disagree. It wasn't deference, not exactly, it was something more fragile, trust still new enough to crack if mishandled. She hated it. Not because she didn't want respect, but because she understood how easily it could turn into dependence. And dependence dulled instincts, made people stop listening to the environment because they were listening to a person instead. That was dangerous. She made a point of redirecting questions back to teams, asking lieutenants what they saw, asking junior soldiers what didn't feel right. She wanted the system to be a lens, not a crutch. Still, when she entered a room, the air shifted. Late one evening, Colonel Ristova summoned her again, not to the command post, to the outer observation platform that overlooked the valley. The cold was sharp, clean, the sky clear enough to feel infinite. "They're fast-tracking your reassignment," Ristova said, hands resting on the railing. "Higher headquarters wants you available." Anna didn't respond immediately. She watched the valley instead, the place where the enemy had tried to disappear into terrain and weather and confidence. "Available for what?" she asked. Ristova's jaw tightened. "For places like this." Anna nodded slowly. That tracked. "You don't seem pleased," Ristova added. "I don't like being used as proof of concept," Anna said carefully. "People forget the cost once something works." Ristova turned to her then. "You think I've forgotten?" Anna met her gaze, held it. "No, but others will." The colonel was quiet for a long time. Then, "You remind me of someone I served with years ago. Brilliant, quiet, refused to play the game." "What happened to her?" "She burned out," Ristova said simply. "Not from failure, from carrying too much alone." Anna absorbed that without comment. "You don't have to stay," Ristova said. "Not here, not anywhere." Anna almost laughed. "Yes," she said, "I do." That night sleep came hard. When it did, it was thin and crowded with fragments, echoes of alarms, the sudden blackout in the generator room, Thorne's voice stripped of certainty. She woke before dawn, heart steady but heavy, and lay staring at the ceiling until the base stirred awake again. She dressed quietly and went to the shelter. The system was calm. No anomalies, no whispers, just the mountain breathing slowly, methodically. Anna let herself rest her forehead against the cool metal edge of the console, just for a moment. She thought of the first time she'd learned to listen like this. Years ago, long before rank or command centers, back when she'd been the only woman in a windowless lab, surrounded by men who spoke louder when they felt threatened. She'd learned then that silence wasn't absence. It was space. And space, if you were disciplined enough, told you everything. Mid-morning, Lieutenant Davis stopped by with a folded piece of paper. "Message from home," he said, awkward but kind. "It finally got through." Anna stared at it longer than necessary before taking it. She hadn't told anyone she'd been waiting. She didn't open it right away. Instead, she finished her checks, closed loops, logged data. Only when the system was settled did she unfold the paper. It was short, written by her sister, casual words trying not to sound worried, mentions of everyday life, a question at the end that lingered longer than the ink deserved. "Are you safe?" Anna folded the paper back up, slid it into her pocket. Safe was relative. That afternoon, she joined a patrol heading to the outer sensor nodes. Not because she had to, because she wanted to feel the terrain again, to remind herself that data came from somewhere physical, that patterns were born from pressure and movement and human choices. The soldiers didn't object. They adjusted around her without comment. As they moved through the snow, one of the younger soldiers fell back beside her. Nervous energy, curiosity barely contained. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "can I ask you something?" She nodded. "Were you scared when they came inside the base?" Anna considered the question carefully. "Yes," she said, "but fear wasn't the loudest thing." "What was?" "Clarity." He frowned slightly. "When everything narrowed," she continued, "there wasn't room for anything else. No pride, no anger, just what needed to be done next." He nodded, as if filing that away for later. They reached the node and checked its housing. Snow-packed but intact, the system hummed on, patient and faithful. On the way back, Anna slowed, letting the others move ahead. She looked out over the valley again, sunlight glinting off untouched snow. She wondered how many times strength had been mistaken for dominance. How many people had learned too late that volume wasn't authority and certainty wasn't wisdom. Back at the base, word came down officially. Thorne was being transferred out within 48 hours. Investigation pending. Career uncertain. Anna felt a brief, sharp pang of something close to guilt. She reminded herself that responsibility was not the same as blame. That evening, Thorne appeared at her shelter one last time. "I won't be around tomorrow," he said. "I know." He hesitated. "I wanted to say you didn't just save the base, you changed it." She shook her head. "The base changed because it had to." "Still," he said, "you were the catalyst." Anna met his eyes, saw no challenge there now, only acceptance. "Take care of yourself, Sergeant," she said. He nodded, then almost awkwardly offered a salute, not because of rank. Because of respect. After he left, Anna sat alone in the shelter as night fell again. The mountains returned to shadow. The system continued its quiet vigil. She thought about leaving, about being sent to the next place that didn't want her until it needed her, about repeating the cycle. And she realized something uncomfortable. She wasn't tired of the work. She was tired of the loneliness that came with being early, with seeing what others couldn't yet afford to believe. But she also knew this. The moment she stopped listening, stopped caring enough to be alone with the truth, was the moment she'd become just another voice competing for attention. She wouldn't let that happen. Outside, a faint breeze moved through the valley. The system registered it, classified it, let it pass. Anna closed her eyes briefly. Tomorrow would come, and with it another test. Not of strength, but of whether she could keep choosing patience in a world addicted to force. And whether that choice, repeated quietly enough, might someday stop feeling like resistance and start feeling like change. Why did she hesitate when the order finally came, when leaving should have felt like relief? The message arrived just after dawn, blinking quietly on her console as if it didn't understand the weight it carried. Reassignment confirmed. Transport window set. No ceremony. No thank you typed into the margins. Just coordinates, timelines, and a signature from someone far away who would never stand in this cold or hear these mountains breathe. Anna read it twice. Then she closed the file and sat very still. Outside, the base was waking for the last time with her in it. Boots on gravel, a generator coughing itself awake, the low murmur of voices planning a day that would go on without her. The thought didn't sting the way she expected. It felt appropriate. She finished her final system checks with deliberate care, not because they needed it, but because she did. Every node reported green, every redundancy held. The acoustic network listened faithfully, indifferent to who sat behind the screen. She ran a hand along the console's edge, feeling the faint vibration beneath her fingertips. This system would outlast her. That mattered. When she stepped outside, the cold hit her harder than usual. Or maybe she noticed it more now that she wasn't braced against it. Soldiers passed her with nods and quiet words. Nothing dramatic. No speeches. Respect here had learned to be subtle. Lieutenant Davis found her near the perimeter fence. "They're ready for you," he said. "Transport early." She nodded, "Thank you." He hesitated. "I meant what I said about trust. You changed how we think." Anna looked out toward the valley one last time. "You changed because you were willing," she replied. "Don't forget that part." He smiled a little sadly. "I won't." At the edge of the landing pad, Colonel Rostova waited. No aides, no clipboard, just her coat pulled tight and her eyes fixed on the horizon. "They'll ask you to replicate this," Rostova said without preamble. "Systems, results, outcomes." Anna nodded. "They always do." "And they'll forget the context," Rostova added. "The resistance, the friction, the cost." "Yes." Rostova turned to her then. "Don't let them." Anna met her gaze. "I won't." For a moment the colonel's composure cracked. Not enough for anyone else to see. Just enough for Anna to recognize it. "You were alone here," Rostova said quietly. "You didn't have to be." Anna considered that, then shook her head. "I did." The helicopter arrived with its familiar violence, wind, noise, snow spiraling into chaos. Anna lifted her duffel, lighter than it had been when she arrived, not because it held less. Because she did. As she climbed aboard, she looked back once. At the base tucked into the mountain. At the people already returning to routine. At a place that had tried to break her and in doing so had learned something it couldn't unlearn. The aircraft lifted. The ground fell away. From above, the base looked small, fragile, human. Anna closed her eyes as the mountain stretched beneath her, endless and patient. She thought of the mess hall, of the punch that never landed, of the moment silence had spoken louder than force, of Thorne stripped of certainty, of Davis learning to trust data over instinct alone, of herself choosing restraint again and again when aggression would have been easier. She thought of her sister's letter, of the question waiting for an answer that could never be simple. Am I safe? She knew now that safety wasn't the absence of danger. It was the presence of clarity. Hours later, when the helicopter set down at another nameless outpost, another collection of steel and snow and guarded skepticism, Anna stepped off without ceremony. New eyes assessed her. New doubts formed. She felt the familiar weight settle in her chest. And beneath it, something steadier. She would be ignored here too, tested, dismissed, until the moment listening mattered more than pride. And when that moment came, she would be ready. Because she had learned something the hard way, something no rank or commendation could teach. That strength isn't about dominating a room or winning a fight in front of witnesses. Sometimes, strength is sitting quietly while the world underestimates you, knowing exactly when to stand, when to act, and when to let the truth arrive on its own terms. Sometimes, resilience isn't loud. It doesn't shout, it doesn't swing first. Sometimes, dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.